Hi, this is Brighid Doherty of the Solidago Herb School, the Healthy Herb Podcast, and the Nourishing Infusions course brought to you by Herb Rally. And I'm here to answer your questions today on the Nourishing Infusions. So we're going to carry on. This is part 2, so check out part 1 if you want to hear other questions. D. Kulikowski has another question. And it is, how would you compare this nettle infusion to a nettle tincture? Does 1 cup of nettle infusion equal about 2 teaspoons of nettle tincture? And this is a really good question. Thanks for asking. Basically, I would say no, there's no comparison between a nettle nourishing herbal infusion and a nettle tincture for multiple reasons. One reason is you're extracting different constituents from the plant material. So in the nourishing herbal infusion, it's a water-based extract. You're going to get water-soluble vitamins and minerals and other phytonutrients. In the tincture, that is mostly an alcohol-based extract. Granted, a lot of tinctures do have water in them, so it is also a water-based extract, but tinctures tend to extract more of the quote-unquote medicinal proper constituents, or maybe even poisonous constituents of a plant, and tend to be more like a medicine versus a food. So I wouldn't take a tincture and think like, oh, wow, I'm really nourishing myself. I'm really getting my nutrition today. I would take a tincture, and this is generally speaking, and think, oh, I'm getting my medicine today. I'm like working on some sort of an acute or chronic issue, or I'm, using a tonic herb or an adaptogen herb, and I'm working to not necessarily nourish myself, but have more of a specific action on my body. So that's one main reason why you can't compare the nettle tincture and the nettle infusion. The other reason is because the nettle infusion uses a lot of plant material. And then you're putting an ounce of the nettle, dried nettle, into a quart jar and then filling that with boiling water. And when you do that, the jar is maybe 1/3 full of dried nettle leaf to start, maybe even more than 1/3 full. So if you're making a tincture with nettle and it's a dried leaf extract, then you would probably be using about that same amount of dried leaf nettle, maybe a little bit more, but a slightly different amount. If you are using fresh nettle to make a tincture, which I think if you are going to make a tincture with nettle, I would make it with fresh plant material so that you can actually get some of the more medicinal constituents that are actually in the hairs of the nettle. Then you wouldn't be able to fit the same amount of plant material, because it would, when you dry the plant material, it shrinks, it gets a lot smaller, but it's still the same amount of plant material. It just doesn't have the water anymore. So it maybe shrinks by 4. So you would need to put 4 times the weight of fresh nettle than you do dry nettle. So 4 ounces of fresh nettle equals 1 ounce of dried nettle by weight. And you would have a hard time maybe even fitting that in your quart jar. I don't know, I haven't done it, but I haven't weighed it out like that before to test it. So another reason why it's different is because you're probably using less nettle plant material to make your tincture than you are to make the same volume of nourishing infusion. And then a third reason why they're not the same, nettle infusion and the nettle tincture, is because you're not going to take, let's say you can put the same amount of plant material in your infusion that you can in your tincture. So they're equal in that sense. And let's say, even though it's not true, that you can extract the same amount of minerals and nutrition from the nettle that's in the infusion and the nettle that's in the tincture. Then we have 2 equal volume medicines or infusions, tincture versus infusion. Now, in one day, you're going to drink that quart of Nourishing Herbal Infusion. Are you willing to drink a quart of tincture in a day? Of vodka? 100 proof vodka? So that's another reason why you can't really compare. It's not like the tincture can concentrate to that much of a degree. So it's pretty much apples to oranges comparing nourishing infusions to tinctures of the same plant, of any plant, I think, as far as nutrition is concerned. Good question, though. Thank you for asking. Okay, next question. Melanie Maldonado. What happens if you don't refrigerate your infusion, but drink it within 24 hours? I think that's what I often do. It's totally fine. The whole point of refrigerating your infusion is so that it won't rot on you. It won't ferment. Basically, there's so much protein, especially in some of the main, like the really green leafy herbs, the nettle, the comfrey, that the infusion will turn pretty quickly, especially if it's in a warm air, like the bacteria that are in the air and in the jar and on the wherever, they want to eat that protein. And so it can turn relatively quick, but you will know when it turns because it smells bad, it tastes bad, it's just wrong, it's just off. So the nose knows, right? The nose knows. Trust your nose, and if it smells bad, then feed it to your plants. But I will often, so my routine might be if I make my infusion at night before I go to bed, and then I strain it in the morning, so that's like 8 to 10 hours that it's been out. And then I will put it in either a jar, mason jar, or in a thermos. I might put it with ice if it's the summertime, or even if it's the wintertime. And then I will carry it with me throughout the day, and I will just sip on it throughout the day without refrigerating it. Although I think that it definitely tastes better. Most infusions taste a lot better when they're cold. If you're going to an office job and you can kind of put it in a refrigerator in an office while you work, that's great. Pouring it over ice, that's great too. I'm a landscape gardener and I paint houses in the wintertime interior, so I just kind of have it with me throughout the day and I don't run into any problems, but trust the nose. Okay, next question. Kathy Wynn. Would a Lynen face toner and cream help with eczema? And so, oh man, Lynen is so softening and soothing and anti-inflammatory for the skin, both topically and internally. So I don't see why it wouldn't help someone who is dealing with eczema. And I think that, of course, we don't want to help eczema, right? We want to negate it, or we want to recover from it. We want to heal it. We want to help the person who is dealing with uncomfortable eczema. I think also taking Lynen internally as the infusion, and then you could even use the infusion as a wash on the face. I don't know if I talked about it in my video. I'm guessing I am, since you're asking this question. I don't remember. It was a year ago that I made those videos, but I have ground up my nettle blossom in a coffee blender and powdered it, and then mixed it with a little bit of water to make a paste. You could also mix it with honey, which is very hydrating. And then I've applied that to my skin and just let it dry on there. and then just kind of brush it off basically. And my skin just felt so soft afterwards. So definitely wouldn't hurt to try at all. I would go for it. Okay, and then I had one more question for this round, and this is from Bettina Dorthalarson 8563. Can I do something about the taste? I was able to drink the infusions for 6 months. Then I couldn't do it anymore. The taste was awful. I infused it for 12 hours. And she's responding to the comfrey infusion video. So, yes, you can do lots of things with the taste of comfrey, nettle, these like really green herbs. I'll speak specifically to comfrey. Comfrey to me tastes like milk. It tastes like milk. So if you have an aversion to milk, you might have an aversion to comfrey. Also, I find that there's a texture thing with comfrey where it's both astringent and emulsient. So it's both like tightening to mucous membranes, but it's also slimy at the same time. And so that can also be a turnoff for people. I have found mixing comfrey, you could mix it, well, number one is any infusion over ice is going to taste much better, I think, than room temperature or plain or out of the fridge. Ice will cut the texture and it will cut the taste as well. And then adding chocolate, hot chocolate, you can make hot chocolate with it, just things that would go well with milky flavor. So comfrey hot chocolate's a great recipe that you could make, which would basically substitute out your milk for your hot chocolate with comfrey infusion. Another option is mixing it with apple cider. That I find that apple cider has like such a strong kind of sweet but also earthy flavor to it that it can really cut some of those more intense flavors. You could dilute it. You could make your comfrey infusion and then you could dilute it by half with water and drink it that way. You could also, I know what Susan Weed likes to do is she will add a pinch or two of Monarda or bee balm to her comfrey infusion. While she's putting the comfrey leaf in the jar, she'll also put a little bit of bee balm in there, and that she likes that flavor. So that would be, or any kind of mint, just a small pinch. A little goes a long way with the infusion. You could heat it up and you could mix it if you like that savory flavor. This is what a lot of people like to do with the stinging nettle, which also has kind of a really strong green flavor to it. You can add miso broth or something salty, a little tamari, like make it more of a savory, bone brothy theme kind of idea with the comfrey. Versus going like on a sweet angle, because it would be like kind of mixing your greens with sugar, which that doesn't really work as well. So you could play around with it. Also, maybe your body is saying, I think I'm good with the comfrey for now. And you could just take a break from it and return to it another time and see if the flavor, number one, listen to your body. And if your body's saying, oh, I just can't do it anymore, then take a break. And there's plenty of other herbs that you can work with. And then return to the comfrey and see if it feels better for you.